This is a moment in Jewish history. I'm your host, Ben Bresky, and with me is Meir Eisenman, who is a licensed tour guide who is going to tell us all about the Hurva Synagogue and the Old City of Jerusalem. And I remember when you used to live in the Old City, you used to go watch every day how they reconstructed it, and you have a personal background story of how your family is connected there, so it was meaningful for you. And I want to know the whole history of this synagogue that was destroyed and then rebuilt and then destroyed again and then rebuilt again in 2010. So Meir, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. Great to be here with you. When we discuss General Yerushalayim, the Hurva Synagogue, and that period, we have to realize that some of us sort of imagine the rebuilding and the return to the land of Israel and to the city of Yerushalayim as beginning with the Zionist movement and what they call the first Aliyah and the second Aliyah in the late 1800s. In reality, on one hand, Jews never really leave Eretz Yisrael. They're always here in Israel in small numbers. And specifically, when we're talking about Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, already over 200 years ago, in the early 1800s, we see a movement of the students of the Vilna Gaon, what they call Talmidei Hagra, who come to Yerushalayim with the specific goal of building Jerusalem. They want to build Yerushalayim. My family already arrives in Yerushalayim in the early 1800s, probably in 1811. My great-great-grandfather, a fellow named Rabbi Avraham Shlomo Zalman Zoref, who learned Torah for the students of the Vilna Gaon, arrived with a Rabbi Menachem Mendel from the city of Shkolov with the explicit intention to build Yerushalayim, to build up Jerusalem. And they managed to purchase or perhaps redeem a parcel of land which is today on Rehov HaYehudim in the old city in Yerushalayim, known as the Hurva, the destroyed ruins of Rabbi Judah HeHasid. About 100 years prior, a Jew, Rabbi Judah HeHasid, had arrived from Poland and purchased that area. Unfortunately, the debts caused the Arab to reclaim the area, and he manages to retake control of that area in Rehov HaYehudim, the area of the Hurva Synagogue of today on Jewish Quarter Road.
And what was the original name of the synagogue before? The Hurva Synagogue means destroyed, right? So when Judah HeHasid built it, do we know its name?
I'm not aware of the name. I haven't seen a name mentioned in the research. But actually was more specifically the Chatzer, the courtyard, the Chatzer HaHurva, the destroyed courtyard in the heart of the old city, that the Arab being so upset, they actually burnt and destroyed, is known as the Chatzer HaHurva, the destroyed courtyard. The students of the Vilna Gaon managed to take back the courtyard. My great-great-grandfather they attribute him receiving what they call the Firman, which was the Arab, basically giving up the own loans and giving them back ownership to that property. He sets up there what we would call today basically a Jewish center. I mean, the Hurva Synagogue was one part of a Jewish center. They set up there a smaller synagogue. They set up there a yeshiva elementary school, a yeshiva post-high school, yeshiva high school, the Eitz Chaim Yeshiva. It was the center of Jewish Ashkenazi life in Yerushalayim, already beginning from the 1820s and 1830s and 1840s. By 1864, they managed to build the main sanctuary. Use terms we're familiar with in America, the main sanctuary, and they call that the Beit Knesset Beit Yaakov, the synagogue of Beit Yaakov in the Chatzer Churvot of Judah HeHasid, in the courtyard of the destroyed ruins from Judah HeHasid. And this synagogue came to be known as the Hurva. And this is the first time, as far as we know, in Jewish history in 1800 years since the destruction of the Second Temple by the Roman Legion in the year 70. 1800 years later, we began to build and we completely build a prominent Jewish synagogue in Jerusalem known as the Hurva Synagogue. Beautiful building. I mean, today it's rebuilt, and anyone walks in the old city can see it.
And so this was a really grand main center, and today it's the location where the big golden menorah is. But surely there were other Jewish synagogues in that area.
It's the biggest, it's the most grand, it's the most prominent, it's iconic. We have to realize up until that point, the Jews are praying in small little, what we'd call in Yiddish, shtiblach, They're praying in small little synagogues. This is iconic. This is prominent. This is an incredible edifice.
And this would be what we would call today like Orthodox Litvish?
Yeah, so you would definitely call it maybe in America Yeshivish, Litvish, students of the Vilna Gaon. Yeah, they were non-Hasidim. It's the first time they actually build, in 1800 years, the Romans destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem, and for the first time, 1800 years later, we build a prominent Jewish building. It remains the center of Jewish life for decades until during the War of Independence, the Jordanian Legion bombs and destroys the synagogue in May of 1948. It remains in ruins, obviously, for 19 years. With the rebuilding of the Old City in 1967, all types of plans began for the Hurva Synagogue, only finally being completed in 2010 as almost an exact replica of the original synagogue in Jerusalem.
Yes, and I remember when I first came to the old city and I saw the iconic archway, and the tour guide took us on that empty patio and told us the story, and there were postcards of this arch. That was all that was left of the synagogue. It's funny because when they started rebuilding it, I said, well, they took down the arch. What about all those postcards? Now it looks like a big construction zone.
Actually, the arch was built as a memorial for the synagogue. The whole synagogue was destroyed except for a little bit of the eastern wall, which can still be viewed, those who visit the synagogue. I just want to add one point. You mentioned this earlier as well. The students of the Vilna Gaon, my family, I have a tradition from my grandfather passed down from his grandparents. They were coming to build Jerusalem. They weren't just coming to start another synagogue in Jerusalem. They weren't just coming to learn Torah in a holy city, as important as all of that is. They were coming to rebuild the Jewish city of Jerusalem. They use expressions as Atchaltahi, it's the beginning of the redemption, or this is part of the redemption process. They were very, very active as far as that we have to be active in bringing back the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the Jewish people, the Torah to Jerusalem. And therefore, for them, when they built the Hurva Synagogue, there were some, as there always is in the Jewish community, there were some that were actually anti. And they felt the funds of the community should not be used to building such a beautiful edifice. I mean, you could build an edifice for 20% of that price, and it'd still be a beautiful synagogue. I mean, the synagogue is one of the tallest in the, I think the tallest Aron Kodesh in the world. But they felt, no, they felt our purpose is to build Jerusalem, and Jerusalem needs a beautiful, beautiful Jewish synagogue, and it has to be iconic, and it has to be something unique and something very prominent. Therefore, they pushed for it, and they were successful. And today, there's something very, very beautiful. Today, you can visit the synagogue and especially go up to the roof, which offers a beautiful 360 view of the entire, Jerusalem, and a view of the Temple Mount. But the synagogue itself, the sanctuary itself, remains a place of prayer and learning Torah throughout the day. And there's a community in the old city that align themselves with those original students of the Vilna Gaon, and they're there for that same purpose, to be involved in building Jerusalem as a important Jewish city and the center of Jewish life. And they believe that for that to happen, we have to, so to speak, partner with Hashem to make Jerusalem again the center of Jewish life. And once again, the Hurva is. You can visit it, during the week, a regular day. There are people praying and studying there. And you come on a Shabbos, it's full. On a Yontiv, it's packed. Over Chol Hamoed, you could barely get a seat. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, of course. Events happen. Just this past Asar B'Tevet, there was a beautiful event of, a special event, Mincha time, to mourning the destruction of Yerushalayim. And it's just an incredible thing to see that spirit continues till today in the old city of Yerushalayim.
Okay. Meir Eisenman, thank you very much for coming on with us. I want to ask you a couple other questions before we go. I guess that's what you were thinking about when you were walking outside and looking at all those construction vehicles. And I believe that on one of the high holidays, you squeezed me in there and got me a seat. And you can definitely see, it's all new, except for that one wall, which is older stone. They purposely left that up to show the only surviving wall that wasn't destroyed by the bombings. The Vilna Gaon, he wanted to come visit Israel. He didn't make it. He turned back and went back to Vilna in Lithuania, but he sent his students. That's interesting, if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, for personal, your personal connection, absolutely. I mean, for me, growing up as a child in the States, I grew up on stories from my grandfather that I heard from my grandfather about the Hurva Synagogue that our family was connected to. It was a very, very real part of my childhood, very real part of my upbringing that, we are from Yerushalayim. We are the students of the Vilna Gaon, and our family was involved. And Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Zoref and his son Rabbi Mordechai Salomon and his grandson Rabbi Moshe Salomon, who my grandfather was named for. As a child visiting Yerushalayim, that was always an important part of the trip, seeing that arch that you mentioned and seeing the connection and, reading about our family members that were on the signs there. And then after making Aliyah, moving here, and like you mentioned, I lived in the old city. Watching the synagogue go up was just incredible. Was just, my grandfather's no longer alive, but for us it was like a dream come true, and they built it like an exact replica. And then when I was fortunate to attend different family simchas in the Hurva, it was something so meaningful to realize that I'm attending a simcha in the same place where my grandparents made their simchas, in the same synagogue in the same place, and just was incredible. The Vilna Gaon himself, correct, he doesn't make it. There's a fascinating letter how he describes how much he wants to make it. He unfortunately doesn't make it. One of the sources quotes that he said he didn't have permission from heaven, whatever that exactly means. I'm not sure.
Well, it was probably hard for a Jewish person to traverse across. You didn't just hop on a plane.
Right. It was difficult, but we know he tried. We know he tried, and he tried to get there. He passes away in the late 1700s, and he tries at least once. But his students, including like I mentioned, my ancestors, including the Rabbi Nachman Mishkolov and Rabbi Yisrael Mishkolov, they're actually successful. The branch of students that come to Jerusalem, they were influenced, and like I mentioned earlier, they believed in you got to build with your hands. Almost what we would call a Zionist idea, for lack of a better term today. They believed you have to come and actually build. It's not going to happen by itself. The return of the Jewish people, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, under their leadership. I'll just give you an example. We talk about numbers. When the students of the Vilna Gaon arrived in Jerusalem in the early 1800s, my grandfather arrives in Jerusalem. He meets 2,000 Jews, most of them Sephardic, most of them elderly. By the time the Hurva Synagogue is built, some half a century later, 50 years later, the Jewish population of Jerusalem is already 12,000 people. Out of a city of 20,000, the city already has a Jewish majority. They're building the new neighborhoods outside the old city walls. They have a prominent Jewish site, the Hurva Synagogue rebuilt. They're watching this return to Jerusalem take place before their eyes, and it's something they were actively involved in. They weren't just, sitting back and letting it happen by itself. There was something that they actually moved forward. It's incredible.
Meir, thank you very much. And your website is israelbymeir.com. And what kind of tours do you give?
Today I give tours throughout Israel, many in the old city of Jerusalem. You could check out my website. You could also send me an email at israelbymeir@gmail.com. A lot of people today use WhatsApp. That's 972-526-960-860. More than just showing people, I want to connect people. Baruch Hashem, I've been able to do that in the last over a decade, and I hope to continue doing that, connecting people to the land, to its people, and to its incredible past, present, and future.
Meir Eisenman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben Bresky.
This has been a moment in Jewish history. If there's a subject that you're interested in, send me an email at bbresky@gmail.com or check out my website for past shows at benbresky.substack.com. Thank you to all the listeners, and shalom.